Test. There we go. Okay. Looks like everything's going well. Just checking for drop frames because I have a different video card in there. That is correct. Everything's looking good. Excellent. Welcome, everyone. It is that time again. Well, it's been a while, actually. It's time to build myself a new PC. So, my current PC is my venerable i7 7700K, which has done me quite well for many years. In fact, mostly just needed to upgrade the video card in it in order to do a lot of things that I'm doing, which is streaming, obviously, content creation, creating videos to publish on YouTube, which is always got its horsepower considerations, but fortunately a lot of that's on the video card. But also doing gaming, which is video card and CPU, and just have had some need to move up the computer to the next level. So today, I am going to be building a new computer with a couple parts that might be sitting around here. And I'm going to do it live on stream with you, so I'm here to answer questions. I'm going to go through the build process, talk a little bit about the parts, not too in-depth, because these are the parts that I chose that I needed for me in my situation. May not fit everybody in their situations, but it's available. So got a couple of things ready to go, and we're going to just dive right into this. Now, one of the fun things is for me, it's impossible to get a video card right now. So I do not have a new video card. So I'm going to be repurposing the video card from my current machine. And again, it has been updated relatively recently. It is a Red Dragon AMD Radeon 5700X XT, I believe. So it's plenty good enough for what we're doing here, fortunately. And eventually I will still need that in the original box because I'm building a whole new PC because I want to keep the original box as a streaming machine so that I can just use full CPU and full GPU on my main machine for gaming and output that to the stream machine and then stream that to wherever, whatever service that I need at the time. But that means eventually that this video card will have to go back into that machine to help with the encoding. But it'll be fine for right now. And that means eventually updating to a better video card for better encoding in this new machine. But other than that, pretty much all the parts are new. The only thing that is going to be moved other than the video card are some storage devices later on. And that's not even going to be today. We're not going to worry about it today. What we're going to do is we're going to build a PC from scratch. And you're going to be here with me with it all. Now, for the most part, I believe I'm just going to use this camera, so it's going to be mostly focused in on the hardware. Because you'd rather see that instead of me. That's for sure. So let's get to it. I'm going to start, and we're going to talk about the parts first, and then we're going to move on to actually building. And I also need to make sure that my PC is set up so that I can, respond to questions or anything that comes up in chat. So that's going to take me just a second here, but not too long. In the meantime, right here we got some of the parts. You can see just a little bit here. A couple of things you can see right down here is that Red Dragon that I talked about. That's going to be, again, that repurposed video card, but don't let it fool you. It's pretty good. It's good at encoding. It does not, there's no ray tracing on this thing at all. So there's no ray tracing, but other than that, I would say it's easily as good as probably about a 2070, maybe even a 2080 for just general gaming speed and certainly encoding speed, which is, again, what I'm caring about most here. Just pulling up YouTube Studios so that I can go and view the stream, which should be live. I also want to check my audio and everything. Man, that definitely looks live. Audio seems okay, so I've got at least chat, so that's good. Excellent. Now, moving on to some other parts. While I get things situated here on where they're going to live. Start with our CPU. Our CPU is an AMD Ryzen 9. And this is specifically the 5900. This is nice where it's got 8 cores, so 16 threads. So a nice little BC, actually, no, is this 8 or 12? Sorry, this is the 12 core. The 16 core is in the 5950. So plenty of CPU for encoding just by CPU if needed, in case that does happen to be faster than the graphics card, or it allows me to be able to switch in between the two as needed. We got some Hydronaut. This is going to be our thermal paste that we're going to use, and that's for this big old beast here, the Kraken X73. Now this is a 280 millimeter, so it's two 140 millimeter fans. Boy, I got some reflection there, sorry. And this is going to be the liquid cooling all-in-one cooler for our processor. Now, powering this whole thing is going to be this Corsair RM750, so it's a 750 watt And this is rated 80 plus gold, so pretty decent efficiency. I like it because it's modular, so I only plug in the plugs I need to for cable management. It's all flat black. I'm going with pretty much a non-RGB build here, which kind of brings us to our case. Our case, which is the LanCool Mesh 2, the Performance Edition. So the Performance Edition has a couple more fans in it than the RGB one, and specifically no RGB fans. I'm going to turn off the non-existent cat cam. There we go. We are going to build this on the Asus ROG Crossfire 8 Dark Hero. Now the nice thing here about the Dark Hero is that this is a relatively new board. In fact, where I got it, this was one of the last 2 that was in stock, and they had 25 in stock the day before. This board has a couple of nice features. It's only got 2 M.2 drive slots, as opposed to 3 as some of the higher end boards normally have. However, they both are PCIe 4, and it has a, let's call it a technical term, of a buttload of USB 3.2 Gen 2. See, it's got a front panel connector for USB 3.2, which I may or may not have the cable for in this LanCool box. Probably don't. I'll have to get that probably separately. But it has 8 in the back, 8 USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports, and 6 USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports, and then 4 standard USB 2.0 ports. I do use a lot of USB between things like my Loop Decks and my Stream Deck, and just the cameras and everything else. I end up using a lot of USB 3.0, so that's really nice to have. And, you know, just PCIe 4, which is the main thing that I wanted, because if I got PCIe 4, I can take advantage of it. I am filling one of those 2 M.2 slots with a PCIe Gen 4 capable SSD. There's a 1 terabyte Samsung 980 Pro. By the way, there's no sponsors here. I'm just saying what I bought. None of this was provided for free. No one's paying me to say any of this stuff. The nice thing about this is it's extremely fast read and write speed. So great for the boot drive, of course. But it's also 1 terabyte, so I can run some of the bigger programs off of it. Might even have a chunk of it set aside for the render, but that depends, because you know, the renders sometimes can get pretty hefty in size, but still it's a terabyte. But just in case, I've got a SATA 1 terabyte 870Q VO. These are nice. There's no RAM buffer on these, so they come in a little bit less pricey, but considering I'm using it for a render drive, that's perfect, because really the RAM buffer is good for when you're reading from it. When you are trying to get information off of it quickly, that's one of the primary uses of it. Yeah, sure, it can help with writing, but I'm not looking for burst write, because that's all a RAM buffer is going to give you for a short amount of time. What I need a good constant speed write. And it is SATA, so it's going to be significantly slower than this. This is more like 7 gigabit per second speed, whereas this is going to be closer to about 600 megabit per second speed. So it's substantially slower, but it's fast enough for rendering video, which is really not bottlenecked by the drives at that point. Video at that point is going to be bottlenecked by your CPU or GPU in its processing. And for RAM, I just got some G.Skill Ripjaws. This is CL16 3200 RAM, 216 gig for right now. So that'll give me 32 gig total of the 4 slots. So that way I can expand up to 64 gig for larger content creation later. That's useful for After Effects. And people are like, well, that's 32 gig, Phoenix. You don't even need the 32 gig. Well, some content creation actually do. some of the content creation,
like After Effects. I'll tell you, After Effects, I sit there
and just doing a simple thing, it's eating up, 25, 28 gig of RAM.
and there's very little overhead. So that just gives you a little bit more overhead to be able to do some other things.
Well, I need 64? No,
But hey, I have the opportunity to get a little bit more overhead in the future if
it's needed. I don't need it quite yet, but I definitely need the 32 gig right now. Is it faster if I got 4 8s for 32?
Yes, because then you're using more channels across it. But
Again, I don't have the ability to
expand later,
which is personally
for what I need, going to be what's
best. So let's get going. Now we got the case, and people are going to be like, "Oh, open up the case and start putting stuff in." Well, no. You always want to try to start with your motherboard and get as much on the
motherboard as you can
before you put it in the case. So I'm going to move some stuff around. We're going to give ourselves a good camera angle. You guys can watch the build. Why is that
slightly blue? Well, whatever. We're just going to continue.
We're going to get this out of the way for now. I'm going to get some things that are going to be
necessary for this build.
Certainly, we are going to need something to open things up. Flashlight. Always have a flashlight when you're building a PC. Most people won't tell you that. But I'm telling you right now, it's going to be pretty vital. Now, and I just got a manual screwdriver. I typically don't use a powered screwdriver because here's the thing. When you're building a PC, most of the time when you put in screws, they just don't have that many threads, and it doesn't take that long to screw them in. And a power screwdriver is going to do one of two things. It'll be quicker. Yes, absolutely. In fact, one of mine might not be too bad to use. But sometimes they over torque and strip the screws. It's aluminum we're working with. It's still pretty sturdy, but most of the time I don't need a power screwdriver. So, and plus, that's just going to add extra noise to the stream right now. So we're going to keep it with manual. Non-magnetic as well. Typically, that's not going to be too big of a problem, especially since we don't have any magnetic hard drives, but hey. Okay, so definitely some of these things we're going to need later, some of these things we're going to need now. Definitely going to need that.
All right. So I'm still just kind of moving the laptop around.
Let's get a good place for the camera. That's not too bad. We'll see if we can't work with that. Okay, let's get the motherboard out because we're going to be building on that first. And that's super easy to open. Just a quick piece of tape. That's actually a pretty nice little. That's kind of cool. Still, don't need that piece of plastic. Oh, static. Please be careful about static. In fact, sometimes this is not necessarily the best surface right here, so we're going to augment this surface a little bit. Make sure you ground yourself before you start doing some of these things. Because, yeah, you can definitely destroy some components if you got too much static. Okay, so we got our board here. Let's take a look at it real quick. And then we'll get to building. Okay. So we got, these are the heat sinks for the M.2 drives. We're going to have to move those off. They got some plastic on it. I would like to notice that one of the reasons why I got this is it's passive cooling on this board, which is just not something that you're seeing too many on these particular boards. They normally, for the higher end boards, they're having a spinning fan on it. And it's a small spinning fan, so of course you got the problem of later on down the road, with that small little fan collecting dust, it starts to cause problems. I got user guide in here, which we will probably look at for like the board connectors later. That's always going to be a good thing. But this is as you can see, it's a socket AM4 for AMD Ryzen. It's already got the BIOS set up for Ryzen 5000 processor, so that's good. This is the X570 chipset, which is why it has both PCIe 4 and some of the advanced features. There's a couple bits of plastic we're going to pull off there. And again, the 570s normally have that fan, but this being passive is really important. And then there's our back panel. So as you can see, I got plenty of connectivity there. Also, I'd like to point out, this is one of the nice back panels that already has the back plate in place for you. So with this back plate being in place, I don't have to put something into the... I don't have to put anything into the case itself. So we got some visitors. I was just looking over chat. Sorry. Audio is doing something weird. Interesting. Let me turn my audio on and see if I can't hear it. Oh, we got some new people. Okay. Let me turn my audio on and see if I can't hear it. Still hear something weird? It seems pretty good on my side. Still hear something weird? It seems pretty good on my side. Yes, I'm wearing a lapel mic, so it does sometimes scrape. Maybe if I just flip it around, since I don't care about... Here, let me... There. We'll just flip it around that way, and that'll probably help with that weird audio, because it's probably scraping against something. So apologies for that. Yep, definitely hit my mic, that's for sure. Or definitely hitting my neck, not my mic. Mic's hitting the neck. Okay, so yeah, we're going to be using the manual. That'll probably be a little bit later. Other than that, okay, and our cables. So this has wireless built in. I do have a wired connection, so I probably won't use that too much, but it's a nice backup to have. So, I mean, that's kind of nice. Just making sure I don't trip on this stuff as I throw it to the side. Boom. Okay. That's what we're going to be working with. This is kind of nice because I'll be plugging in the case cables a lot easier, so I'll keep that to the side. Don't need the SATA cables right now. I may or may not use those later. Again, I like this black motif here because I'm not doing RGB. I'm doing very much of just nice and quiet looking, nothing crazy. Oh, I'll need these. These are the M2. These are super, super tiny screws. Those are for the M2, so I'll need those. I'll need some special screwdrivers for that as well. So and get those out and ready. But yeah, this is going to be under the desk. I'm not going to be looking at it too much. I'm fine with no RGB, so that's what we're working with. So let's start with the CPU. We'll get the RAM in. We do not put in the video card until after it's in the case. Trust me on that. But we do need to look at the cooler and how it connects here, because sometimes you have to remove these. I think the Kraken actually uses the existing cooler connectors. But let's take a look at that first, because we don't want to be messing with this with the processor in place. So that gives us our order of operation, which is good. Okay. We got lots of crinkling because this is a live one. This isn't like some pre-edited video here where everything is all set and ready to go and everybody's done their research. Nope. The only research I've done is what parts I wanted in general. And then the rest of it, we're going to talk it through, figure out what we need to do, make it happen. So got instructions, that's fine. Now, here's our fans, two 140 millimeter fans. We've got some cables. Let's close the knife, Brian. Safety, come on. And we got the cooler itself, which is the radiator and the heatsink. And we got the bracket. So, and in fact, it even has some stuff labeled for AM4. That's awesome. So let's, some AM4 screws. Based on what I'm seeing there, since they're threaded, we're most likely going to take those off. And then probably use one of those. Not sure yet. This is not labeled at all, so it's also not labeled. Okay, so we're definitely going to look at some instructions, figure some stuff out. Let's get some tools ready to go here. Which processor I'm using? I am using the Ryzen 9 5900. They actually just came back in stock at my local computer store. And actually at MSRP as well. So that was $550. So I got screwdriver, being very careful around the motherboard. I don't want to work over it too much because I don't want to drop anything into it. Fortunately, I have done this type of thing a number of times before, so I move pretty confidently. That's just me. A nice little start button in there. If it's your first time doing it, yes, please take your time on doing these types of things. Let's just like I have a NZXT cooler in my current PC, but A, that's an Intel bracket, and B, it was a while ago that I put that in there. So I'm gonna just take a quick look at these instructions here. Installing the pump orientation, yes. Let's see. Is it saying? Yeah, it's Intel. Preparation for Intel. Okay, cool. Preparation for Intel, preparation for AMD. There we go. AMD AM4, excellent. Yeah, remove the stock AMD mounting bracket and keep the original back plate on the rear of the motherboard. So, and by back plate, so this is what they're talking about for the mounting brackets. This is for mounting your cooler, typically fan cooler. It's got these little areas where you can hook it on there. On the back, however, is the mounting bracket, this. So what they just said was, okay, you're going to be removing this, but keeping the back plate. You're going to keep the original back plate. And then we're going to use our AM4 pieces here. I didn't grab my scissors. Instead, I tell you, don't make things harder on yourself. You got little plastic bags to open up. And what did I just say? Don't work over the motherboard. You don't want stuff falling in on it, right? Well, what's going to happen when you like open up a plastic bag normally? Whoosh, how many times have you seen stuff flying all over the place, right? We don't want that to happen. So I just use scissors. And then my wife actually made fun of me on the last Lego build. She goes, I could just open the bags myself. Well, yeah, that's true. And that's safer. Okay, so it's got a threaded part at the bottom. And looks like that threaded part will go into the back plate. And it looks like that this part will go into the bottom of the cooler. Let's get some of that opened up here, right? So it's got its own mounting plate. This little round part will go into the bottom. It has another thread part that'll go through there. And then on the top will be these little caps. So these caps will screw down in and lock it in place. If I got the right caps. Just want to make sure I got the right pieces. It feels about right. Boy, it's not very many threads. It doesn't feel quite right. Well, let's read through the instructions, make sure. Yeah. See, now it says for these came out of the AM4 bag, but it's legit talking about these. It's not AMD TR4, so that's good. Ah, I have them upside down is why. Read the instructions. Once you remove that, you actually place them this way. The cap will then go on top, which that threads in much better. Okay. So these will screw with it's got this rotating cap with a little threaded screw in there. They're going to go down into the motherboard like that, into the retention. So now we got it. Now, because we do have that retention bracket on the back, you know, some people are going to go gung-ho and say, oh, it says remove them. I'm going to remove all 4 screws. Well, why do that? Right now, those 4 screws are keeping that retention bracket in place, right? So remove 2 at a time. Do one side at a time. So let's carefully unscrew the existing retention bracket. There we go. And what we see is that the retention bracket actually goes through the board and has these small little nubs here that are going through that. And that's why you have these special capped ones. They're just going to go right on top and just screw right in. And there's no reason to go crazy on it. You'll notice that there's no like Phillips screw head or anything like this. It's just hand tight. You don't have to like get a wrench out and crank this thing down all crazy. It just needs a little bit. So it looks like this is going to be a really, really easy installation of the cooler because we don't need any, we don't need any of these brackets or anything like that. We just use the bracket that's on there. Just double checking that we don't have to switch it out. It doesn't look like it. And we just put it down on top of the CPU and tighten it down when we're done. So there we go. So those pieces are removed. We don't need those for our build at all. Get them out of our way. These other pieces on. And thanks everyone for stopping by. I really appreciate it. It's very awesome that you show up. As you've seen already, I'm here to answer any questions as we go through. There we go. Okay. And again, so we're going to be mounting this radiator. Typically, you want to put the radiator reservoirs towards the top. That's this part where the tubes go in, because the air bubbles should naturally go up there. And you want to arrange this on the board typically, and we'll double check the instructions, typically where the air bubbles can come out of the cooler and go up into there. So we want the air bubbles to rise up, and we don't want them to get stuck in the pump. Okay, and just, we got, okay, so that gray stuff on there, what that is that is the pre-applied thermal pad / paste. Now I'm not going to be using that. So I'm actually going to clean that off here in a minute. And I'm just going to check to make sure that this bracket is the right one. It is not. So that is a bracket I'm going to have to switch out. This is the correct bracket. Yep, that fits perfectly. Excellent. So we got to take this bracket off, which is just, it's literally just spins off. Super easy there. And I want to try to get my, if possible, as long as it doesn't impinge on our ram, I want, in this case, my pump facing out that way. They do have a pump orientation thing. I'll take a quick look at it and just make sure I'm not crazy. But yeah, once you put it in place, you can even spin some of the stuff. The central part of it that has some just minor little LEDs in it, which is the rotatable upper cap with 12 locking points. Nice. It's for the logo orientation, so that's easy enough. Yeah, in my case, I'm just going to try to keep pointing that way.
You could probably also point them up.
And that would not be too bad because the idea is this is going to be at the front of the case, and that would keep our air bubbles up and away from the pump. So it all depends on what's going to be workable here. See, and I think we just, the trouble, that might be better because it'll just go up and over the ram. So I'll probably do that. So if that's the case, let's get this locked in the right place, right way. If that's the case, that's how I want to lock it. So I can put it in there. Now I'm just gonna set it here without the processor because I just want to look, make sure we're not going to have a problem with the RAM. Because if it gets too close, we don't want to do that. I can it's just a small bit of plastic and a bit of like webbed material. So I don't think it's going to cause any cooling problems with the RAM. But got to make sure when we're doing a RAM, you have to clip these clips down at least on one side. Sometimes there are two sides. It depends on the motherboard, but in the chipset and everything. But it's one side. Plus, one side is longer than the other for this. See, the notch is closer to one side or the other, so you got to match it up to where the notch is on this. And then once you get it going down the channel, it should just push straight down. And now click that lever up by itself, just by pushing straight down. It doesn't take very much pressure. And with that, oh, no. See, it's actually pushing the RAM a little bit when you do that. So we're not going to mount it that way. We're going to test mount it this way and see what it looks like. It's got a lot more clearance. I think I'm just going to keep those up at the top so that the air bubbles naturally go out of the pump. So that looks fine. We'll mount up. I'm going to take my RAM back off right now just because I don't want it in the way while I'm working on the CPU. And it also gets to show you really quick the process. You know, when it's all the way in there, you just push the lever down, that releases the RAM. It just takes a little bit of pressure to pull it up and out at that point. So quick and easy that way. So I'm going to prep my cooler because, again, like I said, it's got that thermal paste that I want to take off of there first. Also notice that there's a place to put wires. So you got to take that into account. There's going to be some wiring coming off of here for the display and running the pump. And it's coming out this side over this heat sink in the back. But I can see there's plenty of clearance. So not worried about that. So let me get a rag. And I do believe I have some alcohol around here. Be right back. I don't even know if you can hear me in the laundry room, but hey. And I have some rubbing alcohol, which I should have gotten out earlier, but I wasn't thinking of. Which I don't see. Found it. And that's because I'm using, instead of what's there, I'm going to be using Hydronaut, which is a pretty decent thermal paste. Typically used for like overclocking and everything, and I'm probably not going to overclock it, but hey. Cheating, I'm removing the bulk of it right there just with this, because it's just a paste. It's very thin. I can use that piece of plastic, that works perfect. And the rest of it, just a rag, a little bit of rubbing alcohol. Kids, always remember to put the cap back on the liquid before you turn away from it, especially if you have pets. The last thing you want is some curious pet to come along and knock over the liquid that you're using for cleaning or whatever. So a little bit of alcohol, and then a little bit of dry, and then a little bit of alcohol again, and we just get all the residual till we get this nice, smooth copper, in this case copper. They're not all copper, but just a nice, smooth copper metal with pretty much all the visible residual removed. Yeah, see, and I got a little bit left, so just get back onto the alcohol part again. That is pretty good. Because no matter, now people ask, why do we use thermal paste? Thermal paste is, they're like, is it good at conducting heat? Well, no, it's not as good at conducting heat as bare metal is. The problem is that no matter how smooth you think that is, and especially compared to the top of the processor, which we'll see in a minute, it's not as smooth as you think. And the thermal paste is simply, you do not need a lot. It's a pea-sized little bit that we're going to put on there. But it's simply to fill in all these little micro gaps and stuff like that, where the bare metal doesn't touch bare metal. That's all. And it conducts better than air does. Because otherwise, if you didn't have it there, you'd have these little tiny air pockets and you wouldn't conduct heat as well. So that's why we use it. Now, we are almost ready for the processor. The one last thing though is I just got all these like plastic bits. So I got one there, one there. Oh, I probably should do the M.2 first because it's kind of in the way. So, because this is the most difficult to get at area for the M.2, this one, that's going to be my boot M.2. So this is too big. I got to get my smaller screwdrivers out. So I lied. We're not going to do the processor next because we've got this part that's going to be right by it, and the pump's going to be, well, maybe not in the way, but enough that I want to get this just situated first. So it feels like there's a little bit of threading in this heatsink. Oh boy. What? Yeah, okay, so I gotta remove that. It's got this little thermal pad itself to stick to the M.2 drive. So this is right here is the M.2 connector. And then it has these little areas here. These are for the different sized M.2 drives. You'll see you're like 2280. Well, it's because it's 80 millimeters long. So, which I believe is what the size of this one is. So we're going to open this thing up. Oop, this is the other one. We'll open that one up later. Here we go. This is my Samsung 9080 Pro. Figure out which side. Oh, just slice that. That's fine. I don't care about the box afterwards anyway. So this little guy, which is, I don't know, it's bigger than a stick of chewing gum. I've heard people say it's chewing gum all the time. It's bigger than that. But this little guy is 1 terabyte of super fast storage. Now, that's the M.2 connector that connects into there. It's an interesting connector, and you got to be prepared for it. Actually, I shouldn't have thrown that to the side. I need to set this down for a second. You got to be prepared for it. One, like I said, there's 3 different locations it can be. Now, I've seen this size before, and this should be the right, yep, it's already in the right spot, so I don't have to move this to one of these other 2 locations. Smaller ones, you may have to move that. So be prepared for that, which is why they give you some of these other things. Now, this itty bitty little tiny screw there is what I want. So we're going to get him out. And like anything else, we're going to test fit that little tiny screw real quick just to make sure it's exactly what we want. And I mean, my hands are not small, and this is just a little bitty screw. Make sure my screwdriver is the right size. That should fit in that little, yep. There you go, threads fit fine. So that is what we want. Now, these are fun because installing these, it's almost like it's spring-loaded. This does not go in like RAM. It does not go in this way. It doesn't even go in this way and slide in. In fact, it really doesn't slide in much at all. It kind of sets in at an angle, and then it's kind of spring-loaded, and you push it down and secure it. So it's hard to demonstrate on camera, but it comes in, as you can see, just like an angle just like that. And just sits in there, and it goes down. That's all it is. But it is spring-loaded a little bit, so if I let go of it, it actually comes up a tiny bit. So, and it does, you have to push it in a little bit, so you don't want to see the threads. Now you can really see the spring-loaded. See, before it wasn't in enough. Now you can see how it's just springing up there. So, you get it kind of pushed in at an angle again. I'll demonstrate again a little bit, see if we zoom in here a little bit. I'm a little bit behind on my laptop, so I have to wait a second for it to see where it zoomed into. There we go. It's not too bad. And it's got a little notch, but the nice thing is you can't really put it in the other way. And you could try to put it in upside down. The notch will be in the wrong place, which is why I usually just look to see the nice sticker. And just put it, you push it in just gently, you'll see that the copper traces disappear when you get it all the way in. You'll get that spring action loaded type thing going. That's good. So you just you don't worry about it. You just get your screwdriver and your screw, and you just come over and gently push down. And again, this is a tiny screw. You do not have to over crank this. You just get it nice until it's secure. And then comes the concept of the sticker, because you got the sticker and then you got this thing and it goes to the heat sink. And this is for conducting heat, this little pad here that's on this, which, you know, once it gets on there, it's going to press down against it a little bit. So some people will remove these stickers. I'll give that a shot because it's just one less thing in between the chips here and the heatsink. Does it really matter? No. And if I don't really get any movement on this, I'm not going to mess with it too much. I'm not even going to bother. It's just not worth it. So I got to make sure I orientate it right. Dark Hero. Okay, and that's lovely because that actually, oh, they don't want me to screw that in. They're going to use this to hold it down. That's interesting. So I need to back up. I do not need this screw here because this heat sink itself its second screw plugs in right where that is. So I just need to remove this little plastic piece. Because it's going to stick itself to it. That's why it's got the little extra collar there. Okay. And I'm just going to put it down on top of it. That should be, that looks, I just got to make sure it's in the right place. Got to kind of bend down.
Look where the going.
I think that actually went in the right place first time. Yeah, that definitely caught. And that definitely caught. I'll say I got those almost blind, got those into the right place first time. So there we go. Now I don't have to worry about my boot drive anymore. I didn't need that little screw at all because it was already in the heatsink. So that's good. Okay, we're at the processor. Let me zoom back out so you can see it. And do not need our small screwdriver. Do not need our flashlight yet. RAM will be coming up next. Okay, I love it. This giant box. Our processor's right over here. And it's right against the side too. It isn't like, oh, this giant box is to protect it. No, it's literally right at the side. So AMD Ryzen 5900X. Now, putting in the processor. This is always a fun bit. You have to know the one little trick, and it's very, very easy. And it's always hard to see on these dark boards, but when you're putting it in, you can't see you can't really tell the pins too much, but if you look real carefully, you'll see, let's see if I can get a flashlight on this. See, they're not very good on this one. Yeah, just barely. It's hard to tell, but right down in this corner is a little triangle pointing in. And you don't have that triangle anywhere else. You can see the pins are a little bit different there, where the pins everywhere else go cross diagonally, and there they got a little cutout. So it's very hard to see this. Let's see if we can tighten this up a little bit. See if we can't get that in a little bit closer. Let me see how that shows up. That's not too bad. Okay, so down in this corner, see these three pins diagonal, these three pins diagonal, those three pins diagonal. Well, they're not pins, they're the holes for the pins. These have a little, triangle there, and it's a triangle pointing in. That's important because you're going to find a small triangle on the processor that needs to line up with that triangle. In fact, if we look at our processor, even before we take it out, if we look very carefully, you'll see there's this little gold triangle right there. And that gold triangle is what we're looking for. Nope, I got it out of frame. Make sure I get it in frame. So that gold triangle on that upper right-hand corner there. Oh, you can't even see it, really. Let's get it out of the case and see it. Okay, so if we're going to get this out of the case, important thing to know here is you do not, there's hundreds of little pins on the bottom. You do not want to touch those in case, you don't want them bent or anything. So you just grab it by the sides. And if I'm grabbing it by the sides, we can see in that corner up there, as it focuses and everything, there's a little gold triangle. You can see it now. Well, you saw it when I was moving around. It depends on where it is on the light. That is what is lining up with that. Now I kind of jumped ahead because I was showing you the triangle. I'm going to carefully hold in my hand because the other thing you want to do, get that back out a little bit. The other thing you need to do is there's a little pin here, or a little lever. And that lever needs to be pulled up before we put the processor in. So we pull that lever up, just like that. It's you do a slight little push to the outside of the processor socket before pulling it up, but not much. And then we take our little is a better looking triangle at the bottom, really. But again, you want to be careful of these pins, only touch the side. And you just line those two triangles up, and you just come in and you set it down square right there, right onto the socket. Now you don't push down, you just get it there, and it'll just fall into place when the pins are all in place. You never have to push down. All I did is I put it pretty square right on it, and it didn't fall into place. So I was like, oh, does it need to go a little bit away? I didn't drag it. I just kind of like lifted up and then tried it a little bit different place, and it fell into place very easily. Do not push down on it, otherwise you mess up those pins. And then you just take this and you push it straight down, and when it gets to the bottom, it'll hit the little lever, they'll push it out a little bit, and it'll clip underneath, or it actually clips on top of the lever. And at that point, the processor's in. You do not need to mess with the processor anymore. So now we need to put our cooler on. And we're going to get our Hydronaut. This is a high performance thermal grease, and they make all kinds of stuff. They even make one that's like metallic based. They use them for a bunch of different things. Everybody's got their own way of putting it on there. You can find YouTube videos of, like, oh, the best way to apply it, blah, blah, blah. And I'll tell you, I was definitely one of those people that they even brought gave you a little scraper in this one. I was one of those people that would take an old credit card and try to pull it across. Well, the problem there is you don't know when you've made the thermal grease too thin in an area. Which you don't want to do that. Oh, we have a cat meow. Hello, Mr. Parker. Thank you for helping. You don't know when you've made it too thin or too thick. And as you can see, this thing it's got engraving and stuff like that, laser engraved. That's minor little, but there's a little area over here. Nope, you can't help. That you can tell is actually engraved. So it's got variations to it. So you don't want to mess around with it. All you do, you just put pea-sized blob. Yeah, about that much. About pea size. You really don't need a ton. A dab more, maybe. Right in the middle. That's all you do. Because when you push down on this, well, you're not really pushing down. I know, Mister, you're so curious, but you need to move. When you secure this down, I should say, it will automatically spread it around for you. So I'm just going to set that there. And I'm going to get 4 screw caps. Yes, Mr. Kitty, all these things. Here, why don't you play with that piece of plastic? There you go. And I'm going to put these on each of the 4 corners. And I'm not tightening these down. I'm just getting them until the thread is there, just so that it isn't going to fall. Right? Just so they're there, so that part is done and I don't have to think about it, because like this one, I'm like fighting it for whatever reason. There we go. Okay? Then take one hand and press down just gently so that it evens out. You don't have to press real hard. You're just pressing down so that you know it's even. And then with your other hand, get these so that they are just barely finger tight to begin with. And that way it keeps it so it's nice and level. Okay? And once you get one, you got to double check the others. And you're not doing it tight yet. You're never going to do them real tight. And there, you've got it pretty much done. And at that point, what I'll do is I'll get it a little bit tighter to kind of squish it a little bit, but not kill anything. So I'll just like kind of gently do 2 opposing angles till they feel about the same tightness. And then 2 there till about the same tightness. Again, you don't need to go crazy about this. They have Phillips screwdriver heads in these. I wouldn't even use a screwdriver on this. You don't need it that tight. You just need it so that A, it's not going to move around, and B, it's pressing down and getting that thermal paste nice and moved around. And I'm just like glancing. Looks pretty even on there. And I definitely don't see any thermal paste oozing out, which we don't want. Most thermal pastes, that's not a problem because most of them are not conductive. There are some that are, though. They'll put metal in them so that they do heat a little bit better. Okay, so we're putting our RAM in. Again, one side is going to be shorter than the other. This is the shorter side. It's usually pretty obvious when you look at it. So you can see there's a shorter side. And when you look at your RAM slot, one side is shorter than the other. So you just line them up. You line up the little notch there with, in this case, they literally have a piece of metal here, which is amazing. This is real great to see. It's just a little piece of metal right there. That's where the notch goes. It's super easy to see on this black motherboard. So just put it in, and sometimes it's got a little tight fit, but that's okay. And you just push straight down, and it clicks. It's got a nice audible click, easy to do. Make sure you start with your lever down, of course. Almost made a rookie mistake. Your RAM doesn't always go next to each other. Check your motherboard manual. I'll show you. DIMM installation is what it says here, page 2-5. So we're going to go to 2.5 real quick, because sometimes the banks are a little bit apart from each other. So it covers, the basics of what I was talking about, how to remove and put it in. It's fine. But then it went to M2 installation. It's not telling me. Okay, so if it didn't tell me there, then let's see motherboard layout possibly. Because it'll tell you what banks the RAMs are in, and you want to keep the RAM in the same bank. Yeah, okay, so yes. So it did it in the motherboard layout is where it talked about. It says, if you got 4, do it this way. If you got 1, do it this way. But if you got 2, do it this way. And it looks like it's talking about putting it in A2 and B2. Let's see, I'm just going to read the text to see if they say anything further. Dual channel configuration, yes, yes. Yeah, so it's saying go ahead and put it in A2 and B2, or I could probably put it in B1 and A1, because this is in B1 already. A1 is actually skip 1 and then put it in. So I'm going to put in these 2. If I have a problem later, I'll swap it to the other 2. So you notice it skips 1. Okay, now at this point, we clean up. Because at this point, we've got a lot of stuff sitting on the desk that we don't need, and we're pretty much at the point where we're going to put this into the case. So I got a lot of cables. I've got a huge chunk of stuff from the, I don't know where that bag went. There it is. Okay, so I got a huge chunk of stuff from the brackets that I don't need. I'm going to put those away. I'm cleaning up here, not because I want to be tidy, which it's nice, I should be tidy, but mostly because we are about to put this into the case. So we're going to need more room, especially since we have an all-in-one water cooler. Now, the all-in-one water cooler is something that we wanted, right? We said, hey, we want a water cooler, CPU, and that's always a great question. Do I water cool or do I air cool? And if you, money for money, typically, if you're spending about the same amount of money for air cooling and water cooling, you get about the same cooling. Now, your mileage may vary. Different manufacturers aren't as good as some manufacturers. Go and do your research. However, one of the advantages of water cooling is since you got a bigger radiator and you're putting bigger fans on it, sometimes it can just be a little quieter. Not always, but that's usually one of the advantages. I got a cat meow. Like, come on. You got to move. Buddy, you got to keep moving. Keep walking. You can't stop right there. I talk about static, and I got kitty cat walking all around. You got a cat meow out over here for a second. Just for a little bit. We'll let you back later. So anyway, air-cooled versus water-cooled. To get the same effectivity in air-cooled, typically you got a much, much bigger cooler that's right here. And the other advantage is because the way I'm going to be using the radiator, I'm going to mount it to the front of the case. And it's going to be pulling cool air into the front of the case. So my cooling solution here is start with the cool air, bring it in, and that cool air will circulate and cool the CPU first, as opposed to an air cooler that's inside is going to be moving the hot air around that's already in the case to cool the CPU. Okay, so I think I got about enough space. I'm going to readjust the camera here for a second because we're going to probably need to move some things. Yes, I know, you want to help, I understand. So since we're going to get the case, let's get this off. Let's get the front one off because that'll be the last time we can get the front one off. It's going to be pretty well sandwiched there in the case. We've got little bits of plastic. I already got cat fur, that's great. Little bits of plastic. Oh, and the pull tab just broke off that one. All over here. My little screwdriver, there it is. There we got that one. And then we got this last one that the pull tab broke off of. There we go. Okay. Okay, so you're not going to see much of the motherboard for a second because we're going to break out the case. This will probably scare the kitty cat away anyway, because he does not want to hear, he didn't like big things being thrown around, so he's going to be like out of here in a second. Anyway, he's sitting where the case is going to go. Quick cleanup on the side. And now this is the LanCool 2 mesh case. It is known for very good thermals. There we go. And it is also known for being very configurable for both cooling and for drive, especially the smaller drives. Yes, kitty. Okay, I'm going to be right back. I got to stop by a second. Hey. swear he thinks it's dinner time, but it is not. Okay, so thing, it's weird. They put it in where the front is facing up, so there's no easy way to get this out right yet. Okay. Okay, I'm going to be creative here, and looks like it's safe enough to put it face down with the styrofoam that it has. Oh, of course. Why do they make handles in the box if the handles are going to catch on the styrofoam and not let you get the case out? Okay, fixed that. There you go, kitty. Box. And we got Static Central here. So, styrofoam, plastic, there's a bunch of static. We want to make sure that we get this stuff out and ground ourselves again. Boy, they really packaged this well. There we go. And here we go. I'm not going to take the plastic off this yet. It's a nice little case. This comes down here so you can access things. You also have the exact same thing in the back. So it goes all the way through. Held down by magnets. You have to open that up in order to open up the panel here. So of course, we're going to come around this side. Let's open up a panel. This opens up this way and then just pulls right off. Nice and beautiful. Take that over, put it off to the side safely. It's tempered glass, so it's pretty strong. We're going to mount there. Now up front though is what's important, because up front is where our radiator is going to go. And right now it's got fans there. So we got to do a little prep work. So we got to take off the front, and this is very interesting on the case because what it has is a reversible. Let's see, how's the front come off? Unscrew. It's got a handle at the bottom, almost like it pulls off, but let's see, did we miss an instruction manual? Oh, we did not miss the cat that went into the box. Sorry, kitty. You can go back into the box. Oddly not. Usually I'm expecting, oh, I'll bet you, no, it wasn't in the back, was it? No one saw it in the back when I opened up the back, did they? Yeah. We got cables back here, and we got cable management covers. I'm just going to take that other glass panel off right now so we got a lot of good cable management covers, but no manual. Online, I'm sure there is one, but I'll worry about that later. Right now, I'm just going to put those off to the side. Okay, so we got some screws here and here. Let's see if that helps take the front off. Those are smaller screws than I thought. Holy cow. I was thinking those would be case screws, but they are tiny. And they are magnetized in really well. Holy cow. They literally, the collar around it is a this magnetized, it's the color around it's like magnetized steel, it feels like. Okay, does that loosen this at all? Does not seem to, but I'm going to get the two off from the other side and we'll see what happens. Just keep moving the motherboard a little bit further out of the way. We'll get a better view once usually when you look at it, you can get an idea of how it connects in. And I know we pull it off because the part with the fans, not only are we going to remove the fans, but on top of that, it can flip around depending on what is needed for space for the radiator. And we'll probably attach the radiator directly to it and the fans behind it to draw it in. But yeah, let's oh, yep, you just got to give a firm tug. There we go. It's just friction. I probably didn't need to take those screws off at all, but they might have been needed for the other part, which is this front piece then comes out somehow and moves. Which is interesting because you got these cables here too. Let's see if we can take the... There is a thumb screw type piece right in here. It looks like it's attached to this front part that we want to take off. Get one thumb screw off. Bet you there's one on the other side. Sure is. Not easy to get to, but it's not too bad. Hello, Mr. Kitty. There we go. That was it. And it just pulls out. And that what it does is it reverses to be more inset or for air cooling versus water cooling. So we've got two fans here that we need to disconnect. I'm just going to slide this back. And I'm just going to pull these fans off. I probably didn't need these other screws taken out, and I don't know what they're for. So we're going to put those back in real quick before I forget. These little tiny screws. You can't go underneath the styrofoam, you dopey cat. You're just going to knock it over. Silly. You can see him moving it, but you can't see him. Okay. That's the last of those put back. Excellent. Let's get these fans out of here. That's the typical thick threaded fan screw there. And I'm going to relocate these fans later to the top, so they're going to be blowing air out the top. And then the back fan will probably blow air in from the back, because I'm looking to do a positive pressure. So positive pressure means that I've got more fans blowing in than I have fans blowing out. And that kind of controls where the dust is coming in at, really, right? So if you got positive pressure, air's escaping everywhere it can. If you have negative pressure, air is trying to get into the case everywhere it can, which could be a whole bunch of crevices and cracks that you don't want it coming in because maybe you don't have as many filters. There's actually filters across the top of it, so there's something to be said, like the top fans could actually be drawing air in. If anything, that might be a good thing anyway, because then we're not shooting hot air out the top, which attracts a cat to lay on the top. We'll have to see. Okay, let's get these fans disconnected. Are they even connected to anything? All right. Let's see where they're going. There they are. We got more lovely plates in the way that are great when we're done, because they're going to be covering up cables. You're able to put drives back here on the back. Oh, you can't see anything. Really need to bring this back so we can, this is working so close here. Oh yeah, these fans are plugged into a fan header, so they are plugged in. Oh, what? No, don't step on the keyboard. Hello? Wow. I don't need that at all. Okay, so this fan is this one plugged into the top. We'll eventually plug it back into there, but we just don't need it right now. Okay, case fan set to the side. Here's the other one. It's also plugged into the top. Convenient, because both those are going to be relocated to the top. So I will be able to like open it up and know which fan's connected to the top, because they'll be plugged into the top. Okay, you're in the way. Yes, you are. Okay, so now why we did this. One, we're getting ready for the radiator, right? That's the obvious reason. But the other reason is this thing has depth to it. And the mounting surface is here. It's on this side. Now this can be put in to this case in a format where it is inset a little bit more. Or turn it around. And then, now the mounting surface, when you get it in there, oop, oh, this is it's hitting this, it's in the way. Or is it, did I put it into this one? Did I put it into the wrong one? Okay, yes, there you go. That lower one, not the higher one. And now that surface that you're mounting to is much further in. That's useful if you want to put a radiator on this side and then the fans on the other side of it. Or alternate, fans here drawing in and blowing across the radiator. So it all depends. So now we can test fit and play around with that idea to see what we like. So we've got our radiator. And so, I mean, technically it could go that way, right? So let's just get this bad boy sat down where we want it. And let's get our cabinet moved over here to this side. get this junk out of the way. I'll move a cabinet over here real quick and we'll get a little bit more height on the situation. So you guys can see down into this. Move that. Take our fans, set them over in our pile of parts. And we have a nice little cabinet. As you get a close up of me there for a second, I get it, but get you right up here. And there we go. These darn cables out of the way. Should have put the camera on the arm. If it was on the arm, I could probably be a little bit more mobile here, but that's not too bad. Okay, so motherboard here, radiator and fans over here. So kind of just test fitting. This is not the way it's going to go, but like, okay, so it can't even fit in the front there. Well, yeah, it can. Actually can. I mean, obviously it's going to be facing the other way. It seems real close. I'm not sure how it's going to fit with the... limited to how far up it can go, but it doesn't seem all that impacted by anything else. So that might just work, and then we can get the fans on the air side drawing air in. So let's give this a shot. So putting a motherboard in. We need our motherboard screws. They're typically going to be they're somewhat coarse threaded screws, came with your motherboard in many cases. I'm going to look through my various bags. And I got fan screws, I got fans. Don't see any good set of motherboard screws. Sometimes come with the case too, but I didn't see anything come with the case. Check my motherboard box again. Make sure I got everything out of it. Yep, got everything out of that. So I usually get them in one or the other. And again, they are hidden. Pulled out a drive tray, and inside the drive tray, sure enough, we have our motherboard screws. Absolutely. Oh yeah, we got a metric ton of screws, and they got us some cable ties and a whole bunch of stuff. In fact, I am going to get one of my little containers, and we're just gonna plastic went down to the table, it's fine. So I'm going to get the motherboard in there real quick, and then I'm going to slide everything closer so we can see. Okay, I just have it set in there. It's not quite positioned. So, fun part on getting your motherboard in. I got this kind of out of the way because we're going to be positioning it better. Nice thing is that it's pretty solidly hooked, so it isn't going to like flop around, which is what I want right now. Don't pick it up by the CPU cooler. Once you get this part in the back appropriately, usually you're lined up pretty good. So, and you don't want to drag it. I'm lifting it every time here. I'm being careful of this fan cable as well. And I'm looking through the screw holes and looking for where it lines up. I've got it pretty well lined up. And it is, boom, it just lined up in the back perfectly. And I'm looking down through multiple screw holes, and there we go. Now I got all those screw holes just lined up very nicely for me. It does take a little bit of practice. Again, you don't want to drag it around while you're doing this. You want to be very careful where you're lifting it up and moving it from screw hole to screw hole. And now I'm looking for my screws. There are usually typically two screws that you're looking for. And we have a cat walking across the keyboard again. Now you can't, it's hard to see the difference here, but one of the screws is a little bit coarser than the other. This one's a really fine thread. It's usually used for plugging in, screwing into hard drives and optical drives. It's not focusing either. Come on, focus. And the other one is a coarser thread. Typically your motherboard is the coarser thread. Coarser being bigger thread. Boy, that did not focus very well. I'm sorry. And I'm going to look for something centrally located first. And since the back is kind of locked in pretty well, I'm going to centrally get the center back one. And that did not feel good going in. Did not feel like the threads engaged properly, so I'm backing it out and trying again. That is definitely not going in well. It doesn't seem like it's at an angle. The screw is at an angle for sure, so that's not good. You're going to have some ones that are more difficult to get to than others. That is for sure. So it takes a little bit of finagling to get, well, maybe it isn't coarse thread. That does not feel like it's going in right. Let me try one more coarse thread in another place where it's a lot easier and see if this, because that's the difference. If it's coarse versus fine thread, it'll only go in a little bit. Let me try one of these others. That actually, no, that's definitely, I think this is fine threaded standoffs. Interesting. Let me get a fine threaded screw and give that a shot. Oh yeah, absolutely. That's supposed to be fine threaded. Okay, so I just got the wrong screw over here. That's why it didn't feel right. So get that out. We'll get a fine threaded one in there. And this one's kind of, like I said, this is kind of a pain going back there, especially without a magnetic tip, but it's okay. And then you just go around and you locate all the rest of them and try to alternate from, you know, kind of top to bottom there so that I had already got it in position enough where everything was lined up, so I'm not having to move the board, especially since I'm, doing the smart thing and working on the table like this. You don't ever want to put in a motherboard while the case is still standing up. Besides the fact that it is more work than you need to worry about, but it's also, I mean, it's naturally trying to pull down to the ground at that point, which is misaligning it through all the screw holes. Just get it on the table like this and put it in real nice and neat. Cool, and I got 2 more. And of course, the one left up top is a pain to get to, but that's okay. We'll make it work. I just found some of the instructions. Boy, they had those hid too. Get this one in. So the top panel has a removable filter, and underneath that filter, it's held on by magnets, and underneath that filter were the instructions. So that's funny. Don't forget to snap a shot of your final build and share it by using hashtag Leanne Lee. Well, I use the hashtag to talk about doing the build. I'll do that as well, I guess. Okay. So, getting this in, I want it in the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of slide it through like that and test fit it. It gives me the most, oh, that's the problem with having those facing up, isn't it? They're barely underneath of it. They are, though. We'll see how that works. So that kind of, man, that's kind of like not quite. It's hitting something, it feels like. Seems like the reservoir is keeping it from getting close enough in. Let's see, does the front close with it like that? Yep, not a problem. So, okay, I like the radiator there. Get the front back off without knocking everything out. Really, it was easy to get off before. Sure. There we go. Okay. So yeah, I want that reservoir up as high as it can go. It definitely has something that's hitting. I can't get above. There's some definitely where it screws in fact. In fact, we should put one of those screws in right now just to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. All right. Yeah, so that's going to prevent us from going any higher than that. So we can screw in our radiator right there. So again, coarse or fine? I'm going to be guessing coarse here. I'm going to give that a shot. Let's turn this around. So yeah, I mean, I just fit it through like that. And fitting it in that way. And then that way I can have the fans in here drawing air in. Alternately, the other way to do it is I could have the fans on the other side. And I can fit the radiator, which, see, the radiator doesn't quite fit here very well. I mean, it's right up against the control panel up there. But it does fit. And it's not too bad for the cables. So maybe we like that too. And then we have the fans on the outside drawing air in over the radiator. I think either one would work. Here's the NZXT fans. Typically the rule of thumb is that the label, not the electronics label, but the label here is the direction of airflow. So it should be pushing air that way. So if they were either put here or put on the other side blowing in, which they fit pretty well over there too. I don't know, I kind of like that. It fits, so I think we're going to play around with that. I think we're going to go that way. And our pump reservoir is higher than our pump outlet, so that's good. So we got that. So we're going to take our coarse screw and find where we need to put it into the reservoir. Oh, wait a minute. See, that's what you got to think about. And dropping screw. That's another thing to think about. Great. Luckily it went right into the reservoir, but still. How do you attach the fans now? So these have areas that pass through. So what we want is we want to find the long screws that are going to pass all the way through the fan and into the reservoir through that small piece of metal. That, fortunately, should be part of our NZXT package. I got some smaller screws. I wonder if those are it. I wonder if those actually slot in all the way through. Nope. They're not what I'm looking for. That's cables, don't care about those. That's what came with the motherboard, so that's not going to be it. That's definitely fans, but not screws. Okay, so that brings an interesting point. Especially since these, you can't see it very well, but that's just a hole all the way through. So if that's a hole all the way through, and we got that set of screws and really not anything else that I'm seeing. Don't step in there. No, that's not a kitty safe place. How do you mount it then to the reservoir? So the reservoir has threaded areas that a screw will go into. That's not a problem, right? So if you just have one of these screws that we have, this does... Boy, I'm dropping stuff all over today. This does just thread right in there, it feels like. Well, maybe not even in there. So those don't seem to be the screws either, because that does not thread in. Super fine. Let's see how coarse it has to be. So this is a coarse threaded one. And that screws right in. So what we're looking for is something coarse threaded, but something that goes all the way through these fans, which I am not seeing. Because I'm looking for a screw, it's 1.5 inches long to go all the way through. Because yeah, these are just empty holes here. I look through my bags again. I mean, I'll actually alternately, these would accept these screws. But that only screws into the fan itself. Well, and even that doesn't accept it. Nope, not like the case fans. So, I need to check the other bags down here, make sure I didn't toss it somewhere. Because, oh yeah, dopey me, I threw all the stuff together. And absolutely, we have some really nice long screws. There we go. I just forgot that I had put all those together down below from the non-used bracket. So there we are. We have these nice long ones, and that will do exactly what we want to do. So I'll go all the way through and into the cooler with the bracket here in between. So we need 8 totals. There's 4 and 4. And they even have some nice washers. So we're going to go ahead and use those. Cool. So now let's put this together. Okay, we got that on one side. Take a screw. Yeah, screw and washer combination. Get 4 of those. We've got our cabling, which is going to go, since it's 4-pin, it'll just go to that fan header, most likely, or onto the motherboard. We'll see which works out best later. So now what they did before is they routed right through this little hole. So if I want it blowing in, I'm going to route it down into that hole, back somewhere behind the compute case there. And this needs to go into the radiator. So we got to make sure stuff's lined up well. Yep, all the way up at the top. Oh, it's always fun trying to find this. That's the trouble with doing an all black build, is that you don't have an easy way to see. It'll probably be easier if I do this one first, because this one's closer. Again, flashlight helps. And I can But I tell you, having a head-mounted light will help too, if you have one. tell if it doesn't have, oh, yeah, oh no, that's not, okay, huh. Problem is, where the hole has to go through, it does not have space to do so. It is actually being occluded by the bracket. And the radiator can't move down any further because this plate. Which means either we remove the plate, because it definitely needs to go down like, I mean, it's millimeters we're talking about here. Which kind of is a bummer that the plate's in the way. It's literally 2 millimeters out where we need it for the bottom of the fan to go in. Alternately, well, see, we have the same problem if we put the radiator on the same side, because it still has to go through the bracket, through the fan, with the bracket in between and the radiator on the other side. So we have the same problem no matter which side we put it in. So let's loosen, like it does not have to go very far. Let's loosen this bracket a little bit so it can move. Just want to see if it can just move just far enough that we can get it in and not have to remove the whole thing, because I kind of like the bracket there. Actually, it can. Okay, so that might work. Barely. That might work. Again, you need like 5 hands to do this. And got it. Barely, but got it. And it's not pushing this bracket up too much at all. It really didn't need all that much. Getting the bottom one in is just as much of a pain right now. It is really right close to where it needs to be, but not quite. Okay, time to cheat a little bit. If I have it available. This is kind of where the electric screwdriver comes in handy. But it's dead as a doornail, so can't cheat. Okay. Oh, I got it. I think. No, that did not get it. Darn it. Okay. How flat is the back? Okay, pardon me, this is going to be out of visual focus for a second because it might be a little bit easier if I put it up vertically. It is so close. It's literally grinding right around where it needs to go, but just a tad off because of the way the bracket is. Alternately, here. I might be just doing this difficult way, because you know what? It's a removable bracket. So we're not going to have everything exactly where we want it to be to begin with, right? Because we know it's going to have to go up further. But I can get it in place at least. There we go. So it goes right in. And then knowing that it has to slide up a little bit. It has to slide up. Let's get these other ones in place. And if they're able to slide around a little bit, then that's good, because then we can just let them slide while we put it in place. So use the removable bracket to our advantage. So we've got one already in place. Much faster if you don't work against the design. But again, that's the difference between a live stream and a non-live stream. You know, we're going to find some stuff out as we go along. It'd be nicer if it went out there, wouldn't it? Undo this one. There we go. I wonder if I can get both of them up there. There we go. Anyway, so yeah, it's, you know, when you got a live stream, you're going to have some difficulties that get worked out real time and live. I mean, I haven't put this, I've never worked with this case before. I've never worked with this particular cooler before. And while I do have some prior experience building PCs, I've built every one of my PCs for like the last, way too many years. Let's not talk about how long that's been. Yeah, let's talk about something else. But you know, it's finding out what the difficulties are and then getting past them. Now, I'm not screwing these in very tight right now because I already know that it's going to have problems going in there with fitting in with that plate. So I am just getting these so that they're attached a little bit, that they can still slide, the whole thing can still slide up and down a little bit. Not very much. Oh, Brian. Put these fans on going the wrong way. Well, I put one of the fans going on the wrong way. The newest fan I put facing the wrong way is all. So I got to loosen this up so I can get that cord out. I was paying attention to my cord and getting it where I wanted it to, and didn't pay attention to the fact that this is facing up, which means it's trying to blow out. Instead, I want it to blow into the case. I want cold air from the outside, from the front of the case, blown in through the radiator. Okay, now, in fact, I want all these pretty loose. I want them just into the radiator. So I want this whole thing to be able to easily slide when I put this bracket in. That didn't feel right. It felt like it cross-threaded. It's in. And last one. There we go. Okay. So I'm taking my fan cables, slide them into here. So they go right back to where my fan header is going to be and everything. And then I insert this into the bottom of these two, right? Not the top one, the bottom one. Oh, well, that's interesting. Well, that's funny. These things right here, this one fell off here. It's already fallen off. These are like little rubberized things for like putting it in. This one's already fallen off. I'm going to have to see if I can find it later. But yeah, it just goes in like this. There we go. And I actually was moving the bracket around the radiator that time so it fit in. And get these the rest of the way in. There we go. And then now the fan cable is nice and tidy. Tighten this down so that now that the radiator is in place with the bracket, because it slid around the bracket and the fans as I put it in place. It pushed down that little other separator down a little bit, but that's okay. It's not overly bad. Okay. And like anything else here, you don't need to manhandle these screws in. They're going to be tight, but they're not going to be crazy. Okay, both fans freely move, not impinged by the bracket at all. We will worry about these a little bit later. Get it back down. And we got our nice and high. We got those up out of the way. We're going to put other fans up there later. That'll be fine. I might not do that for this stream. I might do that on my own later. Just getting things going. Okay. That looks good. We now need to put the bracket screws in place so the bracket doesn't move. That's one on each side. Didn't want to go into that one. So luckily there's two of these because I think they have two of them just in case you have something that starts to impinge upon it. Because that one went in fine. So it went into the second location fine. So we'll go ahead and flip it over, get the other one in, which means that we can look at our cable management real quick too. So yeah, it goes into the second one because that's where the threaded part goes. So that gets that bracket all nice and secured. Wait, why don't you want to go in? Is not, oh no. That rolled into a bad place. There we go. There we go, got it back. Don't go rolling all out of place on me. There we go. There it went in. Okay, good. Okay, so we got a couple of things. We're going to need some of these anyway. So let's take a look at these cables. We've got a couple of things going on. We've got this, which is a USB header. This looks like a SATA header, and those are definitely motherboard. So what do we got? SATA header. Where's that going? Oh, it's SATA power. It's power for the top panel, it looks like. Okay, so all of these are going to have to hook into the motherboard. This is audio. So we got audio, we got USB, we got all these wires. This is like the power and the reset, or if you have a reset. And this is a fan header, it looks like. But this is the fan header controller, so it's not that. Okay, so all these, for right now, just going to feed them right through here for the cable management. When we flip it back over, we'll figure out what we can plug in where. And we'll worry about tying them down and making them neat later, because we don't know how much space we're going to need, right? And these are our two fans that came in from the other side. So we'll loop them like that. Actually put them underneath of them because this stuff is not as flexible as these are. And we'll just get these and plug them into these bottom fan headers. Like so. And that will control the speed of the radiator fan as well. Since they are the radiator fans, NZXT might actually want it plugged into their CPU part. If they do, we can do that later. Right now, at least, we have it plugged in somewhere so it isn't flopping around. So we go back over. Now, a lot of people are like, plug in the video card. Well, no, because some of these things have to plug in along the bottom here. It's just easier if you have more of ability to see, whatever light. I'm using pretty bright lights here. In fact, I just brought this one down and angling it a little bit more so I have good light. And things like this one's easy. It's a USB header, right? Oh, I don't like the angle these came in at, but whatever, we'll fix that. It's for the top USB. It's not for the top USB-C port that is up there, because that port, while it's up there, doesn't have any cables on it from what I recall. So I got to look into getting the cables for that. Some of these others are a little bit more difficult, which we might need. And this is power, so this one we might not even need on the side, so I'm going to leave that out of the way for right now. But there's this nice little piece over here that will help us plug stuff into the motherboard easier, which is this. And these things are great when you have them. Let's get a little bit better angle here, because we're not working over there, we're working down here. So like I said, this one, always USB, usually pretty easy to plug in once you find your USB header. That's a USB-C header. And if you look at your motherboard manual, it'll tell you, sometimes they're labeled, there's USB 1 and 2, but this is a combined one. So if that is USB, yeah. It's a Space Shuttle Z, interesting. So we're going to hold that to the side for a moment until we figure out where we want to put him. These are motherboard connectors for our switches. Reset switch, power LED plus and minus. You just plug into these. Power LED plus and minus right there. So we just plug those in. So the minus was this one, so plus and minus right there, like that. And this keeps all of these individual, like, 'cause that's two little itty bitty plugs, right? So they plug in like that. And then we got hard drive, light, which isn't on here, ground, reset, ground, power. Okay, so it doesn't say plus or minus on this, so we'll put power, those two. I'll put reset on those two. And this whole piece just plugs in your motherboard. So there's always a place for it, and in this case, it's right near the front. There's a pin that is blocked out here. So we've got all these holes in one hole that is blocked out. And if you look, you have the same thing on the motherboard where you have one place where there's no pin, and you just plug it in like that, and it's done. So that will allow us to control power and everything with the top panel. So again, this, see if our case instructions have anything on that. If they have a special connector in there, or if it's not what I think it is. Oh, here we go. We've got a cable diagram. So that's SATA, connect to the PSU, that's for the power stuff. Connect to motherboard, PWM, fan socket. Okay, cool. So that's what that other fan one is for, so we'll have to bring that forward. And that is USB, like I said, and it's for one of the large USB connectors, but we don't have that on this motherboard. So that's interesting. So we have two separate ones here down here, which you can't see because I don't have this aimed very well. So we got right there is our USB, right? These two. Now you also have ones where there's one big one that you can plug into, and that does not seem to be in existence on this motherboard, which means that I need to either, basically I need to find an adapter later. So this will be handled later. These other items though, we got our audio. So again, it's got a single place that's got a pin missing, and we just find where audio is. That looks like it because it's got the pin missing from the same place, and that just plugs right into the motherboard. So no muss there. And this was the fan piece that they said to plug into the motherboard PWB fan location. So we've got several fan locations. Here's 3 up the top. None of them labeled, so we open up our manual for our motherboard. There it is. So we find out where that fan piece is. So usually at the front, there we go. We have a motherboard layout. Fan and pump headers up top, great. Power, which we're going to do in a little bit. 4 is this looks like chassis fan, is what it's labeled as. So these are labeled CPU and optional. CPU, fan, and AOI pump. We'll be plugging that in soon. And any other fan headers? Doesn't look like it. Got the RGB headers. Okay, so we plug it into one of the top ones. Since we have an AOI pump, then I say, let's plug in the CPU. A lot of times, it don't like to boot if it doesn't have something plugged in the CPU fan header. So let's use that as an option here. Oof, there we go. Come on, get past that. I'll get rid of him later. I'll plug that right into this fan header up here. So with that, we got most of the case plugged in. So now we're just going to take some stuff and get rid of some of the slack. And some of these, we're going to pull some of these back through. Because we know like this one right here, our USB, got to be figured out later, right? And we know this one is power for a number of things. So we're going to have it down to our power later. Other than that, the things that went forward, we can just, there's places where we're going to zip tie them later so that they're as close to those areas as possible. And so we got most of the slack pulled back for now. That's fine. I'm not really super concerned about it this second because we're going to play with that later. Nope, didn't get the slack back on that one, did I? There we go. Down by our SATAs. Not even blocking the SATA. Oh, there's looks like another fan header right there. Which one's that? Holy cow. Found one right down by the SATA. H amp. It's the high amperage maybe? I don't know. It's fine where it is. Okay, so we got a couple of things. Connect all cables before turning on, yes. So we got to get that NZXT plugged in because it's going to be super important. That looks like the main one. So let's check our NZXT manual. And let's just verify with it how we're supposed to hook up the electrical so we make sure we get this right the first time. Connected pump tack. Plug it into a fan. So, well, I don't have an NZXT thing connected to the USB cable. There we go. So you actually got to plug USB cable into the USB 2 internal connector. We have one of those. That's fine. That's easy enough. And then this other cable plugs in SATA power and plugs into RGB lighting optional, and then the fan. Okay. So we got to find our USB port in this thing. It's just got a little micro USB, big old long cable, holy cow. And that's going to go into one of our two USB, so that's going to be interesting too when we try to hook up USB to the top again. We'll plug it into one of them for now. And it is right there, okay. It's USB, so you always got to try one way. That doesn't work. So you try the other way, which doesn't work. I swear it's got to go in this way. It's the shape of it and everything. There we go. And then you try it again and it works. So I'm going to route that kind of down this way for now and keep it out of the way. So I'm pretty sure if we just keep it down here, it's going to stay underneath where the video card is going to go. And then this one, this big honking guy, which has multiple connectors on it, because it's going to power it, and it's going to connect in. That's RGB, which we can plug in down there if we wanted to. I don't care about it too much right now. And then a fan header. So this plugs into the item itself. That's right in the back. Probably would have been easier if I had plugged that in before installing it. But hey, you know, not as much fun in the long run. Hi, Kitty. Have you come back to see what we're doing? I can't see what we're doing because my laptop is logged out. There we go. Yes, kitty cat. It does not seem like the way it goes in, so we'll try the other way. Like, that legit doesn't even feel like it's supposed to fit. Okay, so note to anyone that gets this cooler, install this cable before you mess around with anything else. Oh, am I plugging in the wrong one? Shoot. I am plugging in the wrong one. Yep. Okay, so that's got 4 pins. So how do you know which way is up? According to that, it goes in this way. There we go. Not bad when you're plugging the correct plug into the correct place, not the incorrect plug. I was trying to plug the RGB plug into it, so that does no good. So we got our header, which we're just going to bring right over to that AOI pump header. It's labeled that already. It means it's going to show up that way in BIOS, which means easy to control, easier to control. I'll just route that down there. Try to keep it off the caps a little bit because those get warm, but still. And then we got power, which we already know we're going to do a little bit. RGB, doesn't look like we have the same RGB connector that this connects into. Which is fine, I really don't care about it too much, but we'll keep it up out of the way for now. There we go. Okay, video card, power, and then we're pretty much done for today because I'm going to have to plug it into a monitor and, of course, load an OS on it, and that's just stuff that's going to be done later. So we've got our cables right there out of the way. This one just slides. Oop. Dopey, man. Take these off first. What am I doing? Those look like they'll be working as exhaust. Yeah, I might have them in backwards. If I have them in backwards, I'll just switch them around. At least I have a good way to get in there and get at it now. Just trying to put what I thought was the front label facing in, but it's labeled on both sides, so it was hard to tell. We'll find out. Nope, and I got the wrong ones off. Didn't need that one off. I needed these two off. Okay. There we go. And there is a little foot thing for releasing it, which this almost entirely covers, but it's right here to get it back out. You don't need to press that either way, one way or the other, to put the card in, is the good part. Now this one, they are thumb screws. They are thumb screws that I'm throwing around. Try to be a little slower and more careful than I am. But I highly recommend using a screwdriver on that. These cards are heavy. So you do not want this just, you don't need to crank it down. You just do it a reasonable tightness for a screwdriver and you'll be fine. And the last thing we're doing here is we're doing the power. We're going to put the power in the bottom right here. Why is my laptop? My laptop's not live, so I can't see anything. I'm going to put it in right here. And we need to route power up for the motherboard both here. Make sure. Tell you, somebody else just put together a PC the other day. It was all black and it was even smoother. It was an NZXT board, which those things are insane looking. They're really cool, really smoothed out. Everything's covered up. And it was just barely shows the power. And they put the power in and so it was black on black on black. They couldn't see very well. And they were 1 pin off. For this main motherboard connector here, they were 1 pin off. And they blew their motherboard. Just torched it. But we got to plug in here. Make sure you plug it in correctly. There's CPU power separately up here. Make sure you plug that in. And then we have our power for our video card. So we'll need to power all those. So let me get this power supply out and we'll get that going. And this is a solid case. Like there's not a lot of plastic here. There's no like super plastically front end that when you lift it up, it breaks the case. Don't ask me why I said that specific thing. Oh, I found it. I found that piece that fell off. So if the fans are on backwards, later on I'll have to put that piece back on. That's for the brackets up here. I mean, at least everything around the bracket's already done. So taking the bracket in and out it looks like it'll be super easy. So I'm using a Corsair power supply. I've actually used Corsair power supplies in the last 3 builds that I've done, including Snow White, my wife's white NZXT case machine. She has a AMD 3700, I think, and a GeForce 2080. So, and it's just a 750. You don't need 1,000 watt. Like, unless you are building a workstation machine, a full-on workstation machine, you don't need 1,000 watt. If you're doing SLI video cards, okay, yeah, you could use 1,000 watt there, but anything else, 750 is more than enough especially for what I'm doing here. Like, this is not a high power machine. where I even need the 750, but at least it's good. So fan, these are typically meant to be bottom mount these days, where they're blowing out through the bottom. This thing has got its own filters down at the bottom and everything, so that's where we're going to mount it. Typically coarse threaded screws. So I got my little screw holder over here. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab a coarse threaded screw and test it out just to make sure. Yep, this goes in real smooth. And this is what's called a modular power supply. So instead of a big cable sticking out the back, it's got all these little, boy, why aren't you focusing? It's got all these little areas where you can plug things in. And they helpfully label them too. So again, fan being down, that means this would be the top. They're even labeled nicely so you can see them like that. You know, peripheral, your 2-pin ATX or 24-pin ATX, which is your main motherboard power. You know, your 2+6 or 8+4 plus your 4+4 CPU is over here. So it already tells you these things. Now, we know we need some of these, and some of these are going to be, the nice thing is this opens on both sides, so it isn't too difficult. I'm not too particular about putting the cables on ahead of time in this case. I don't think we really need to. So I'm going to slide this in and use my coarse screws to get this in place. And we'll wire stuff up. I'm not going to power it on again during stream because, one, the cats are looking at me like they're going to eat me for dinner unless I give them dinner. So, because we're getting there. You got a whole hour, buddy. It's an hour to dinner time. He doesn't care. So feed the cats dinner, and I'm just going to build the OS on my own, and because that's not as interesting on stream. Ha! The magnet got too close to some screws back here. I was like, what was that sound? It was all the fan screws I took out from before. That's our main 24 ATX power supply, so I'll need that. That's for sure. So I could do it standing up. That'll probably be the more intelligent way. Sometimes some cases have a removable bracket right here. So you remove it, you attach your power supply, you slide it in. Those are the best ones. I think I'm just going to stand this up because that looks like the best way to do it for this one. Because then we can just have these both down. Slide it in. There's decent space, but there's not a lot of space. So I think I am going to connect my cables. I think I'm going to just go ahead and do it. The tray that has the drives is slightly movable, but I don't want to have to like figure that all out right now. Typically the split side goes into your motherboard because different motherboards need different sizes, but we'll see because that's too big to fit there, so that's incorrect. The split side definitely goes over here. Okay. I've seen it both ways, but I could be wrong. So that's why you take a look and try to plug it in. SATA power. Okay, that's a 6+2. So those could be used to be hooking up to your video card. Because it's got two 6+2s to plug into the video. It even says PCIe on it. So that's our video card. It's got an 8-pin, so we'll plug that into an 8-pin. We're going to go ahead and plug it in down here, because I think the top ones might be easier to plug in later if I have to. And then the CPU one, this says PCIe, so that's PCIe as well. We don't need that yet, because we only got the one video card. CPU. Any others say CPU, because this is just a 8-pin. And we needed, I think it's an 8 and a 6. Flashlight. That was that one that was at the top, and it is an 8 and a 4. So again, you look ahead of time, you figure out what you need. This is our 8, so we definitely need that. I also like these are all nice and black because, again, I'm doing a non-RGB build. Yep. So there is our 8 for our CPU. Oh, that's definitely the wrong way. Boy, that's because I'm plugging in the CPU side. Burp. It was 2 different size clips. So it won't let you plug it in the wrong way. The smaller clip goes there, the bigger clip was going to go into this motherboard itself. Okay, so now we need, that's SATA, so we can throw that aside. That is, oh boy, that's old Molex. Not going to need that at all. I don't have a single Molex drive. Spare screw. More SATA. So then, what are we using? We're using, it's another 8-pin. That's our PCIe. Going through cables again. You don't use a PCIe, do you? No, because we need 4, not 6. See, that's a 6. That is, see, it's an 8 on one side with a 4 that's, there's the other CPU. It's even marked CPU, there we go. I didn't see it when I threw it aside. So these CPUs, it's an 8 and a 4, and you're like, oh, but it's an 8. Well, no, it's not. It actually splits apart to a 4. So all you gotta do is split it apart. So one of them is gonna be split, one of them's not. That's all it is. There we go. So that is the power that I think I'm gonna need. And then it leaves all this over here in case I need to get other things later. So all plugged in, slide it in. Again, my fan is facing down because it's going to exhaust out the bottom. And that lines all the screw holes up real nice and neat. Another reason why I know it's facing the right way, because power supplies on the left-hand side, you'll see the one screw is kind of in a corner, right? But the other screw is inset a little bit more. So that just kind of helps you get it in the right place. Let's get all these screws. That first one, I didn't like how it kind of connected, so I'll check that in a second. That one's okay. That one did not feel good going in. Switch out to another screw just to be safe. There we go. And so I didn't tighten them all the way down at first because I wanted to just get it in place. Now I just go back and give it another little quarter to half turn. Again, nothing has to be super tight here. Okay, front panel closed. Okay, and then we got this whole big flapping molasses. And all of this is going to be, we know the CPU ones have to go to the top, CPU and CPU. So those are just going to go, I'll probably be able to play around with this a little bit here. So probably be able to take these, and there's little places where you can do small little thin wire ties, which I'm going to do later, but I'll probably be able to just do this and kind of wire tie them or get them tucked in there. And there's an opening right up here, and I know the CPU motherboard connections are right the other side of that. So let me get those there. One went, there we go. So we'll get those there for right now. This is all just kind of temporary. I'll go back later and do some better wire management. This motherboard and its connection is literally right here. I can see it. It's the other side of this. You know, your little, you can't see up quite that tall, but so So it's literally the other side of this. So, because I can see it through here. So I'm just gonna, again, feed this right through here. It's all messy right now. I'm gonna go back later, play around with some of these, where some of these wires are, and get them in a little bit better place. But at least I know I don't want this impinging on anything else, so I'm just gonna make sure that that is not in the way. The other nice thing is, pretty much that's where the video card's going too. So do a similar thing here. Make sure it doesn't cross any of these other wires. Get it kind of behind this power cord a little bit, because power cord is going to be a little bit more towards the top, while the video card is going to be a little bit more towards the bottom of the case, even though it's a terrible way to say it too, because it's not really even the bottom. It's because it's got to go out a bit as well. So again, not clean. I will have to plug in one of these others for all the SATA power here in just a little bit, because we know we got two SATA connectors back here that have to be plugged in. Here's one, there's the other one, but we'll get those later. I just want to show you guys where the main power points are right now, so that you have that information before I end the stream. And I'll do a lot of those nicety things here in a bit. Oh, yep. See, because I haven't done cable management yet, it wants to pop loose. Excellent. Okay, so here's that. Again, this is kind of like the CPU, except for this is a 6-2 split. I need 8 on both of these, so just kind of keep them together. This one, if you do it the right way, it kind of does clip on, but the clip isn't super strong. I've never had these really stay all that well. See, it does kind of clip on, but eh. So there's one, and it goes on this side, because it's the second one. It doesn't matter. You can put them, they're both the same plug. It's just personally, I want the first one going to the first one, the second one going to the second one. But in all reality, these are both the exact same plugs, so there's no order for those two to go in. Just as long as they both have all 8 pins, or whatever is appropriate for your video card. My video card's an 8.8. Other video cards might be a 6.6. That's why they have these plugs modular like they are. And you don't have to like clip them together all that perfectly either right beforehand, because it will, not only does it not stay well, but if you just plug them in, it will actually just work fine. But again, I'm just trying to be somewhat accurate while I'm doing this. Oh, the clip needs to go to the outside. I've got the clip facing the wrong way, that's all. Do not like how it's forcing me to how it wants me to rotate it there, which just kind of feels unnatural. The cheater, not cheater, the other way you can do it is just plug in the one and then plug in the other one afterwards. It does seem to work nicely. It'll clip in. There we go. Okay. And then you can wire ties those together later so they hide a little bit better, and then just kind of route it straight down. Again, every video card is different. It depends on where airflows are, where you might want to route. In fact, I might even want to route these up the other way and come right up the back here and then do that. So I might change that later. First time using the case, so I'm just playing around with stuff. 24 pin. Again, it'll only plug in one way because you can't see it too well, but some of these sockets are square and some of them are kind of house shaped where they have angles on top. And so, but typically you want to, there's a release pin like here. The release pin was here on this outside part where it was easy to get out. Same with this, it's on the outside of the motherboards where that release pin typically goes. So it plugs in just, oh boy, reflection right into my eyes, right there. And yes, it is properly plugged in. I did not move it off by one pin to the one side, so I'm not going to blow my motherboard. And then, boy, it's a thick cord too, so you just kind of, you just cable management wise, you can kind of get it in there a little bit better. You can also look for cable extenders, and the cable extenders will have a nice thing that'll just come up, and it's just all these braided cables that plug right in. It looks really good. I'm not really going to be looking at this too much. I'm more looking at cable management right now for it. Not necessarily looking nice, but just not being too difficult. So just plugging in the CPUs now. I'll plug in the 4 first because it looks like that might be a little bit easier if I do it that way. And it looks like, again, this is pinned to the outside. Look at this cable. There's a fan cable here that I don't like where it's crossing, so I'm like changing that up a little bit. So you can't see it too well, but I'm just taking one of the one I split, so one of the 4, and plug it into the socket. There we go. There's one. And then I take the 8, which is the 2 4s that I did not split apart. And again, it's clipped to the outside of the motherboard. So in this case, the top, the release clip. And there we go. So now we've plugged in our motherboard in 2 different places, plugged in our video card. As you saw, there were some other SATAs that I still need to plug in that are going to power peripherals like the pump, things like that, which we're definitely going to want to have. But those are things to continue next time, basically. Well, off camera, really. So I'm going to continue this build and finish it up, and that'll be the new game PC, especially since I got to do some things like the monitors are currently plugged into the current primary PC, so I have to move those. And also got to move some other stuff around. So that's going to take me a little bit. That's going to be super boring. I don't think anyone wants to see that. So I think I'm going to end it at this point now. And thank you everyone for dropping by. Thank you for watching that PC build. We got most of the stuff that would trip up a lot of people kind of covered. And got it pretty much put together. I got a couple other things to plug in, and then I'm going to be ready to put an operating system on this. So thanks again for dropping by. It's Phoenix Nova. I'll catch you next time. Somewhere over here. I got like, ooh, Inception. Somewhere over here. And not ending.